Welcome to the Mayor's Office, the forum for Pacifica's mayors to casually converse with regional leaders about nothing and everything. The year is 2023 as I'm sitting here, and so right now I am Tygarjas, Twyrls, Bigstyck, Mayor of Pacifica, and welcome to the Mayor's Office. The theme for tonight is, what does it mean to be a good neighbor? Usually I try and shy away from pieces of paper like this, but I wanted to get a few quotes down, because as I was meditating on that concept of being a good neighbor, for those of you who don't know, I have some religious studies background, and there were some religious teachings that occurred to me. There's this Jewish teaching, this Rabbi Hillel was known as being a real heavy cat, and when asked about the meaning of the Torah, the Jewish scripture, and specifically, the asker was like, okay, well, if you can tell me what it all means while I stand on one foot, I'd be impressed enough to maybe follow these teachings, to which he responded, well, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. And that is the whole teaching, and the rest is merely explanation. And then a little further in time, in the New Testament, you have some sayings of Jesus, such as, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, which you'll find in Matthew 22:39. And a little further still, he gives this teaching about, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me, which comes out of Matthew 25:40, and talks about how we're treating those who probably could use a hand up, rather than more to process. And I was looking for a quote out of the Quran also, because there's a lot in the Quran about helping orphans and widows particularly. And there's this sentiment about do not touch the property of an orphan except in the best way until he reaches maturity, when presumably he can then have something for his livelihood and take care of it himself. As an outsider, if I'm interpreting that in a way that's adequate. And that comes from verse 1734 out of the Quran. So there's also a Buddhist teaching, and I feel like it ties it all together. And in this Buddhist teaching, there's these acrobats performing their act. And it's an act where one stands on the other's shoulders. And the one gets on top of the shoulders and says, okay, now you just look out for me and make sure I don't fall, and this act is going to go great. And the one holding him up says, no, wait a minute. You need to make sure that you are well balanced upon my shoulders, and so notice if I'm shifting my weight, because if you don't notice these things, you're going to fall. And then the guy on his shoulders kind of jumps down and says, no, wait a minute. It's really important that you notice what I'm doing, because if you're not looking after me. And the guy goes, no, you look after yourself and your own footing on my shoulders, because you need to feel it, and I need to watch out for me, you watch out for you, this is going to go great. And they debate about this for a while, and somebody passing through says, gentlemen, I hear you having this loud discussion. Could you go visit the Buddha, because I bet he could clear this up for you like that. And so they do. They go visit the Buddha, and the Buddha listens to this discussion. Okay, so wait, you're telling me that he should watch out for himself, and you're going to watch out for yourself, and by doing this, you'll both maintain your own stability. But he's telling you that you need to watch out for him, and he'll try and kind of watch out for you, and by doing this, you've got each other. Well, I'll tell you, the answer is quite simple, sirs. By watching out for each other, you are watching out for yourselves, because if he's focused on him and you're focused on you, well, and you're both going to be focused on your own stability, but you need to also check in once in a while. So the reality is that even though it might make conceptually the task a little bit more difficult, as you are acrobats and surely must focus, if you can maintain both concepts at once and do that form of mental acrobatics over the course of your physical feat, that is how you will truly maintain balance. And of course, this is a Buddhist metaphor for something else, but I think it pertains to the concept of what does it mean to be a good neighbor. So I'll tell you in advance of introducing my guests that this is somebody who I have a very strong friendship with. If you don't know my history, I used to serve on the board of directors for the Pacifica Resource Center for the 5 years before I was blessed enough to be able to be voted into council, and I appreciate the opportunity to try and serve in this way. And over that 5 years, I had the honor of trying to do that good work with that organization, and so formed a very strong friendship with Anita Reese, the executive director of the Pacifica Resource Center. And I want to tell you this history in advance because I thought it might be a creative approach to, at times during the conversation, take on an adversarial stance with some of these issues, which are some very sensitive issues around homelessness or drugs or mental health or services that people are offered through the Resource Center to help solve some of these issues. And it gets sensitive, but I also feel like after 5 years serving on the board of PRC and just shy of 3 years on the board of the City Council, oftentimes there's an adversarial vibe to some of the work that's trying to be done, frankly, for the, in my opinion, best possible results of our community. So I might take on kind of the part of an adversarial character as I present some of the issues. And it's experimental, so we'll see what happens. But with that having been said, I want to present now our guest tonight, who is Anita Reese, the Executive Director of the Pacifica Resource Center, my good friend. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to be here tonight.
Absolutely.
I asked you to be here specifically because there's a big fundraising event coming up at the end of the month that I'm supposing this show is airing, the Palmapalooza. And this will be the first time since the pandemic that the big event has been in person, right?
Absolutely. Yes, it is on September 30th up at the Farallon Room at Skyline College. Very excited about finally being able to come back and celebrate together.
My understanding is that this is a sold-out event?
It is. Very exciting that we are sold out, a month before it? Oh, I guess timing-wise, about a month before the event is happening. But we do hope to have more spaces available. Folks that are interested in joining us at Palmapalooza can join our wait list. And as soon as we know if spaces are available, we'll contact folks so that we can have a wonderful full room and enjoy the sunset together.
And what is the theme of this year's Palmapalooza?
Sunset Dreams.
Ah, that sounds beautiful.
Absolutely. We thought we would take advantage of the landscape of Pacifica, and the event will be right around sunset so we can all enjoy it together.
That sounds awesome. And presumably if one becomes inspired over the course of this episode to maybe contribute to the work of PRC, even if they might not be able to get a ticket to the event this time around, surely they have a way that they can contribute to helping their neighbors.
Absolutely. Our website is the best way, or stop by the office. Our website is pacresourcecenter.org, and to give, it's /give.
Awesome. So before we go into particulars, why don't you tell us a little about what Pacifica Resource Center is, the kind of work you do, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, PRC has been around since 1974. We actually started off as a satellite site for the county to offer county services on site in Pacifica. And about 2-3 years in, the county decided it no longer needed to have a satellite office. So the city of Pacifica actually advocated to keep us open. And I believe that we might have become one of the first core agencies of San Mateo County as a result of that advocacy from the city of Pacifica. So we were under the Parks, Beaches, and Rec department for a while. And then about 30 years in, we split off from the city and became fiscally sponsored. And then in 2016, we became an independent nonprofit. And our primary goal is to provide economic security services to anybody who needs them in the city of Pacifica. So whatever it is, we try to find, if we can't offer it in-house, we try to find resources outside.
So I think what I heard you say is that next year's Palmapalooza will be celebrating the 50th anniversary.
It will.
And that's presumably the ticket you definitely want to get because that'll be quite a celebration.
Absolutely, yes. 50 years of serving our community.
Awesome. So let me start with a lighthearted, easy question. Why are you so intent on bringing every homeless person in the Bay Area to Pacifica? Why is it you want to see our streets littered with homeless folks?
Well, I don't.
Prove it.
Yes, right. Yeah, a few years ago, there was an article in the newspaper that basically said that. We're really, our goal is to provide support to anybody who needs the support. We do not try to bring unhoused people to Pacifica, but unhoused people are unhoused and they move around. So they may end up in our city. And when or if they do, we're going to provide them the best services possible with the goal of helping them return to housing. So it's not to continue to have unhoused people on the streets, it's really to help them move into housing and off the streets.
So that disclaimer notwithstanding, one thing that I hear actually come up from folk on occasion, and so I'll go back into character for a moment. Well, when you have homeless people, doesn't that mean you get more revenue? So don't you want the problem to persist? Don't you want to keep folks in poverty and want as many of them as possible so that PRC can be funded and you, Anita Reese, can thereby pad your own paycheck?
Right. I believe that's the homeless industrial complex. And no, our job actually is to work ourselves out of a job. That is my goal. That is the organization's goal overall. But we recognize that there's always going to be some folks who need support. You know, they're living on a fixed income. But ideally, what would happen is because of the services that we provide, folks will have everything that they need and won't need us anymore.
So I think that, largely that for some is a difficult concept that you ultimately want to work yourself out of a job. I think on the basic, most primal level, often we have as human beings, at least what I perceive as this preset of, I need to make sure that my Maslow's hierarchy of needs are met. That's kind of automatically baked into my brain. Mm-hmm. And so the notion of, I wish to do what I do so well that I become obsolete by doing it that well, I think begs this next, I think automatic thought, at least, for someone who's apparently more primal in nature than my dear friend here. But, okay, so what you're saying is that the way that you make a livelihood, the way you put a roof over your head, eat, you would allow that to go away tomorrow if you could, thereby putting yourself into the street. And that's kind of a,
Yeah.
That's...
I never thought about it that way, but I would just go do something else. But yeah, absolutely. My
We're hiring
hope,
it safely.
Yeah. My hope 100% is that the services that we provide at some point, because we care for everybody in our community, will not be needed, right? And because of that, I will have everything that I need as well.
I think my experience tells me that whenever I've genuinely done something that another human being regarded as helpful, mm-hmm. and heaven knows I try to maintain for myself the thorough belief that if I ever help any human being, it's strictly by accident, and that I'm not that intelligent. But what occurs to me is in those accidental moments in which I seem to have benefited someone's life in some genuine way, that later they come to me and really say thank you, there's always a sense I perceive that they would not let me succumb if I were in a position suddenly where I felt as though I might. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. My experience tells me that, well, if I've treated the people around me with some form of dignity and respect, and even more so to the point where they were able to find a method by working to a place they truly wish to be, and somehow they associate that with me, especially if there's like more than one of those sorts of human beings somewhere in my vicinity. Because, if I'm in a place where I can't help myself the way I would wish to in that moment, but I've helped other people in other moments, suddenly they're there. And now they're really curious how maybe they could aid me in that. And as I hear what you're saying, it occurs to me, well, as somebody who's touched a lot of lives in this community over a long period of time, if you were suddenly in a place where like, oh wait, I helped everyone, now how am I going to put a roof over my head? How am I going to eat? It occurs to me there might be a lot of people there who would love to help put a roof over your head and help you to eat. And I seem to have a sense of a reciprocal working vis-a-vis the work you do, that if you ever succeed in the mission to be out of a job,
Right.
could in and of itself come in handy if there's ever a question on the other side.
Right. I mean, and when you think about the fact that if we worked ourselves out of a job, it's because everybody has everything that they need, then we would all have everything that we needed, and I wouldn't need to continue to do that work. Right. So I absolutely agree. I think that, there's this sense of I've been talking about this a lot lately, this sense of not having enough. And sometimes when you come from this place of not having enough, you don't. But if you come from a place of abundance, that I will have everything that I need, that I actually need, not want, but need, then we'll be okay. Right? And so one of the things we try to do at PRC is not to say no to anybody, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that we can do everything that somebody wants, but if someone comes in, our goal is if someone comes in and needs something specifically, and we can't give them that one thing, but we can give them these other things, then the hope is that they walk out of our office feeling like they at least have a plan. They have hope. They have come up with a strategy in that process to get something that they need, and then they feel less hopeless, right? They feel less like I'm not going to be able to get by, and so that's what we try to do, right? That's what we are continuing to do, is to provide that space to be able to find what you need. Most of the time, we already know what we need. It's just a matter of having a safe place to talk about it. And then you come to the conclusion that you would have come to if you had that space at home or space with your family. Sometimes it takes somebody who doesn't know you, really, to help you see the way.
An objective, neutral third party.
Absolutely. Non-judgmental and neutral.
I can easily reflect on times in my own life when, first of all, I've been very blessed in my life. Not that I came from a rich upbringing. My mom worked her butt off as a waitress. My father certainly, worked a job that he didn't particularly care for as I was growing up. And as a result of this, I had a relative baseline of comfort. They had what they needed over the course of the time that they were cultivating me. But certainly there have been moments over the course of my life, blessed as it's been, where you encounter that obstacle. And it doesn't necessarily need to be something as deep and obvious as suddenly I'm out of a house.
Right.
Suddenly, I lost track of a substance abuse issue. Or what have you, or I have a mental thing that just came up because of a genetic whatever. It could be something simpler than that, and this feeling of frankly going to college and managing a stress level that I was unaccustomed to, far away from home. And bear in mind, I'm going to a private university, a very expensive private university, where I'm mostly writing on scholarship, and it's not the money thing. It's the workload thing.
Right.
And I'm trying to do too much, and suddenly I feel like I'm backing myself into this corner. Well, if I don't do enough, I'm not going to have my scholarship. And it becomes a complex. And suddenly it's like, okay, now I have way too much workload. I have way too much stress. I feel like if I take a step in any direction, I'm going to fall. And that's from like a really privileged place. And from a really privileged place, I can appreciate what it feels like to feel so overwhelmed that I'm not sure if a next step in any direction will alleviate the feeling of being under a mountain. And then, I needed mom to, say to me, are you eating right? Are you walking around a little bit? Go find, whoever on campus can help you, and then going to that person on campus and saying, this is how I'm feeling, doc. And again, private university, so there were actually therapists on campus, privileged. But I needed then the encouragement to get to that next objective, neutral third party to try and figure out. And that's from a place of privilege.
Absolutely.
Tell me about some of the folk you run across. Without, naming names and getting too specific, I understand the nature of your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're not therapists, right? But what we talk about is crisis intervention. So we listen, right? We reflect. That's what we do. I mean, we've got folks who it's all along the spectrum, right? We've got people who come in during the holidays only. They don't need help any other time, but they come through at the holidays to get help for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, and we provide that support, and we'll never see them except for that one moment in time. And then we've got other folks who come and get groceries from us on a regular basis, then that helps them maintain their household, make sure that they have healthy food to eat. And then we have folks who come in major crisis, within days of being evicted, and they have nowhere else to go, right? I remember this one person recently, youth, grew up in Pacifica. I mean, I guess transition age youth, right? So over 18, under 24, family moved away. They were living with a girlfriend at the time. The girlfriend kicks them out. They have no proof of their residency in the city of Pacifica, right? Because all their stuff was with their parents and then at the girlfriend's house or ex-girlfriend's house. And we helped them get into shelter, but we had to advocate for them to prove, like, what do you do in a situation where, all of the things that show that you have lived in this city or lived in this county is with somebody else, and that you're still at that age where you don't, you're not keeping track of your receipts or, have any information about your bank account because everything's online, everything's by debit card or whatever. And so, that was kind of an extreme situation where this person had no idea what they were going to do next. They had no support at all at that moment, at that time. And we were able to help them get into shelter. And, they were able to find some stability and then be able to have that space to come up with their next step.
Wow.
Yeah, that just happened recently.
Wow. And that's one example.
One example.
Off the top of your head, any idea how many clients PRC has seen since you've been there?
Oh, geez.
Let's ballpark it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Give us a low estimate.
Yeah. Probably, 2,500 times 13-ish.
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, quite a few. I mean, overall, PRC serves 1 in 7 families that live in Pacifica. So when you think about that,
32,000-ish, I think.
I'm like, good job. I was like,
How many families in Pacifica?
It varies from year to year, but 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 families is what we actually serve in the city of Pacifica.
I feel like 3 years ago when I was on the board, the number was like 1 in 10.
It was, yes. It has increased definitely over the last 3 years. But we also know that over half of Pacifica could use our services. So we're definitely not, we're connecting to the people who have probably the highest need, but there are a lot of folks in the middle who just don't know that they could come to PRC for help, because we know how expensive it is to live in the city of Pacifica and in the Bay Area overall. So whenever possible, we have very flexible eligibility requirement so that folks can come and use our services. So we're never going to turn anybody away for food. Somebody needs groceries, we're going to give it to them. And then some of our other programs, we have like our holiday program, our back to school program, our Thanksgiving program, all have higher income guidelines so that we can serve as many people as possible.
So you just give things away to people who have done nothing to earn it.
We do give things away. That is our job, is to provide support to anybody who needs it.
So you admit to being an enabler.
I know, right? Some people do think that we enable. But no, I mean, I think that what it comes down to is what I like to call harm reduction, right? By providing those supports to folks, it means that they can pay their rent, right? When you have, well, in the family in general, you don't want your family to not have what they need, right? And so sometimes what happens is folks will pay for back to school supplies instead of paying their rent or buying food, right? Because they want their children to go to school with whatever they need to succeed. And so we provide those resources so that they don't have to spend their limited resources on back to school supplies or holiday gifts or Thanksgiving meals, those kinds of things. So yeah, we're trying to make sure that people don't become unhoused, right? We provide these resources and these services to help them stay housed. I mean, I think that's we don't talk about it a lot, but that's really what our work is about. It's about making sure that people can stay housed and support their families.
So let's talk for a moment. I asked that glib question around homelessness earlier, but let's go there, because maybe not everyone knows about you, or not everyone reaches out in time. Let's talk about the various flavors of homelessness. And by the way, I could go back into the act for a moment, but I would suppose that not everybody who is homeless in Pacifica necessarily has a deep-rooted connection to Pacifica. But I also am going to, really step out of the act for a moment and admit a profound ignorance that I certainly don't have any data to tell me one way or the other.
Right.
So from your experience, first of all, do you see any influx of people from outside of Pacifica coming in? Does it go both ways? Are there people who choose to stay homeless? How does one even become homeless? I'm going to ask you about 15 more questions and expect you to remember all
of them. Right, yeah.
I can remind you of the...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. We have done some unofficial surveying of folks who are unhoused in Pacifica, and most of them have some connection to the city. While they may not have been born and raised here, they lived here for 20 years and then became unhoused. In some cases, some of the folks that we have been in contact with have, they were living in Pacifica, and maybe their parents passed or a family member passed and the house was in trust and they lost their housing because the house was going to be sold. That happens way more often than you would think. I can think of quite a few people who've had that experience since I've been at PRC. So sometimes that's how it happens, right? And then other times folks came here, they were housed, maybe their apartment complex got red tagged and they didn't have a place to go. That has happened.
I'm sure you're not thinking of anything specific.
No, not at all. So I mean, those circumstances have happened, and then absolutely there is a small percentage of people who are passing through and stay here for a while, and then they leave. They are not necessarily going to stay here forever. And yeah, that's what happens. People move, especially folks who are in motorhomes and cars, right? They're on wheels. They drive away. And sometimes they land here for a few months, sometimes longer, but then most of the time they do move on because this wasn't where they were planning to stay. It just is where, they're trying to figure out their next steps. And during the time that they're here, we're going to provide support to them and try to help them decide what they're going to do next. We had one person who was an in-home support person, and the person who they were caring for died, and they were able to get a motorhome. And so they were staying in their motorhome, but their family was in LA. And so over time, we provided them quite a lot of support, trying to figure out what their next steps was going to be. And in the end, they moved back to LA. They moved here for the job, and then they lost their job, right? And actually, in that particular case, unfortunately, the family never paid them either. So that was a whole other issue.
Oh, no.
Yes. So not only did they lose their housing, they never got paid, and then they were sort of stuck here, but also kind of was like, well, maybe I'll stay here, and tried to come up with other jobs. So lots of different things happened, but they were probably here for 3 or 4 years and then moved back to LA or Southern California. I'm not sure exactly where.
Okay, so, sometimes people living in cars or larger contraptions are a topic of discussion in Pacifica.
Absolutely.
3 to 4 years that they were living in their mobile home. And so what does that look like in terms of, I think that if I were to maintain the facade, it would be, why can't we just kick them out? How can we justify allowing someone to live in their vehicle in Pacifica for 3 to 4 years? How is that even humane?
It's definitely not a fun thing, for sure. I mean, the folks who live in motorhomes at least have more space than living in a car or a van or a truck. But it definitely also makes them a target in this community, unfortunately. So on the one hand, you have more room, which is great. On the other hand, you are subject to harassment and vandalism from the community, unfortunately, because of the assumptions that people have about who are homeless and who are living in those vehicles.
Well, before you even get to assumptions, here's somebody not paying property tax, therefore not improving the city by putting up shop there. I'll not assume they're a child molester or a drug addict. I'll not assume that they're dumping fecal matter into our watershed. But just by virtue of the fact that they're taking up space where our residents are paying property tax one way or the other to have that space being a nice space, how do you justify somebody taking up that space for 3 to 4 years without contributing when there are people, presumably living right there in a house where they're parked in front of or what have you? And, again, how do you justify that? 3 to 4 years.
Right. Well, their income gets reinvested in this community, right? They buy their things here. So while they may not be paying property tax, they're definitely paying sales tax. Moving a motorhome is quite expensive to drive, right? So they're buying their gas here. They're buying everything locally because they're not going to be driving their motorhome around to go and find the cheapest price someplace else.
First of all, you're telling me that this person living here for 3 to 4 years has a job.
Most of them do have income, whether it's paid employment or Social Security or something like that. Not all of them have income. We are working with people to get income so that they can rent someplace in the future, right? But yes, they do have income for the most part. Not a huge amount of income. I think the average income when we did a survey several years ago, so it's not up-to-date information, but it was, I believe, somewhere around the $1,200 or $1,500 a month mark. So definitely not enough to pay rent here or anywhere, I think. Maybe in another state.
Right. So, I'll maybe swing to the other side of the spectrum for a moment and say, okay, so for 3 to 4 years, they're taking what pittance of a living they are making and reinvesting that into the community. It's kind of interesting. I'm swayed to a point of, okay, these are people who are, they may not have much, but what they have, in some measure, is contributing to this community. Well, this person who spent, their $1 million on a house, not by the way that everyone who's lived in Pacifica, presumably for the last 30 years or more of their life,
Right.
has necessarily put $1 million in half. Maybe they have, I don't know. I'm personally not a homeowner, by the way. I'm a renter, always have been. But, it's not a far reach to say, well, okay, they're contributing not nothing.
Right.
It's a start, but I'm contributing so much more.
Right.
So how is it right that they're blocking my view, they're making me nervous when I walk my child to school because I don't know who's living in there? Okay, they're not contributing nothing. How am I supposed to feel better about that? Right. That I feel that sense of danger. If not, but just by virtue of the fact that I don't know.
Right. Well, you could get to know them. They are your neighbors as well. I mean, temporarily in some cases. They're also not technically doing anything wrong, right? They can legally park on a public street as long as they move every 3 days, right? So, and as long as they're not, they could still be cited for other things, but not living in their vehicle or sleeping in their vehicle. And one of the things we try to do when we meet folks who are living in their vehicle is to encourage them to be a good neighbor, right? They should be good neighbors as well, right? They should not be leaving garbage around. They should not be, being a nuisance in the community. And for the most part, most of the people that we are in contact with who are living in vehicles, they 100% are trying to stay under the radar. They do not want to cause any problems because they know if they cause problems, it means that people will start either harassing them or the police will be called on them and they'll be asked to move along. So for the most part, there are, of course, always going to be some folks who just don't care and they aren't trying to be good neighbors. They're dealing with whatever their challenges are that maybe possibly led them to living in their vehicle. And they're just not at a place where they can be good neighbors. But most of the people who are living in their vehicles are trying to be good neighbors. They clean up around where they're staying, they sweep up. They've shared with us that a lot of times other people dump their garbage near them because they're going to get blamed, right? So oftentimes they're cleaning up after other people.
No self-respecting homeowner would do something like that, Anita.
Right. Absolutely not.
But, without the facade, I'm hearing you that what you are saying is, well, not everybody is coming from the evil place, your imagination and sense of uncertainty and therefore fear is conjuring, but there might be a more human story to the point that you could just knock on their door.
Absolutely. They might not answer because they're afraid that you're going to be mean to them.
Wait, the fear goes both ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even open my door for anybody at my house.
Oh. And yet you would ask a poor RV dweller to open their door.
Well, that's what I think of when I go to their homes. It's like, I want to be respectful. We're not going to go at a time that's dark or, really, really early in the morning. Absolutely. This is their home for sure. And unfortunately, people do. They go up to their windows and they look inside and they, want to see who's in there. And it's, so I can totally understand why folks don't open their doors when you come knocking. It takes us quite a while to get people to talk to us. We will oftentimes leave notes just saying, we're not trying to push you along. We're not trying to get you to move along. We're just trying to offer services and see what we can do to support you. Because again, our ultimate goal is helping them return to housing, whatever that looks like. And it could be living in a motorhome park. Maybe they never thought that they could afford something like that, but they have enough income to do something like that. There's a couple places I found recently, way out there, but my mom lives in Madera, which is near Fresno, and there was a motorhome park that was $600 a month to rent. Yeah. I was like,
we need nothing.
Yeah. So anyways, but those are the things that we can offer to people. It's like, okay, if everybody has choices. They have to make the choice that makes the most sense for them. And sometimes that initial choice is, I don't want to move from Pacifica. I like it here and I want to stay here. And then we start working with them on like, okay, how do you achieve that? What do you need to be able to do that? And then over time, they recognize that maybe it's not a realistic goal. And if they're really committed to that goal, then there's things that they need to do to get to that point. And so we try to provide that support and develop housing plans for them.
I think I have a question around, okay, what if it's somebody who is not as easily inclined to find their way to a choice that is objectively probably the most helpful for them and thereby everybody else. Before I do that, though, I feel like I might be transitioning away from mobile home land. My understanding has been, as you've alluded to, Pacifica put this safe parking program in place as a result of the ACLU lawsuit. I don't want to go that deeply into it. Yeah. And, I know from experience it was very difficult for city council to come to the conclusion that that was the right thing to do. But now that we're here for this presumably 3-year period of time in which we're engaged in this program, and we don't know necessarily specifically who it is, or maybe we do at this point, maybe the new police chief has cornered specifically who it is, but we know that some of the folks in this program have not been treated well by, I'm guessing, neighbors rather than people just passing through our community. I definitely view the kind of things that I've been hearing as a form of bullying that says as much about whoever is doing the bullying, if not far more than those who are receiving that as they're trying to find their way to a better position in their life. I wondered if you wanted to take an opportunity to say something about that before we kind of move past.
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately, there have been ongoing harassment of the folks who are in the program. So again, you're in a motorhome, you're much more visible, and then add another layer that they are in marked off parking spaces, so folks can easily, target them.
So in a way it makes them more secure, but in a way it makes them more vulnerable.
Absolutely. I mean, not to mention that they are sleeping on a public street in their vehicle. So anybody who's living in a car, whether it's a motorhome, a car, truck, van, whatever, there's always the fear that someone's going to run into them, right? You see hit and runs happen all the time, or people who hit parked vehicles. So there's always that fear on top of everything else. And then in this particular situation, people who don't want them in their neighborhood can target them even more. So things like honking as you pass. We installed video cameras on the motorhomes so that we could report it to the police, because the folks who are living in their motorhomes are scared to make waves, and so they haven't wanted to press charges in the past. But they are getting to the point where they are planning to press charges if they have proof, and that's what the police need. So that's why we put up the video cameras, and so we've been able to forward videos of people honking as they pass. Unfortunately, we didn't catch the vandalism that happened to people's motorhomes, but we have been able to document the ongoing harassment. And so the new police chief has been wonderful about really trying to figure out a way to hold the community accountable. Absolutely. And we continue to work with PD on that. And I think that we've seen a decline in the harassment, but it still happens every day, but it's not as bad as it was.
I'll turn to camera 3 for a moment and just say to the fine residents of Pacifica, as somebody who was a part of the decision-making process, which was really hard for the decision makers, knowing full well that we're putting, I'll say, members of our community in a more vulnerable position. But even if you're not believing they're members of our community, these are human beings who are trying to find their way to housing that is not their vehicle, otherwise they wouldn't be in the program. We're kind of stuck in this, from my perspective as a council person, legal cage in which we have this to work with for the next, I think it's now 2 years of our lives or whatever. And if we're going to be neighbors, because we're going to be neighbors, it would be more helpful to take the friendly approach, because otherwise it sounds like everyone gets to lose in one way, and in the other way there's the potential of, okay, it's not going to feel great, but there's a finite amount of time, And rather than making it worse than it currently is, we could let it be what it is, get through it together rather than in an adversarial way, and move through. And I bet that's going to help all parties involved ultimately if we take that tact. And I'll get away from that soapbox now, and let's talk about those folk who really are in a bad way, to a point where, you know, you're probably not going to help them find their way to a good choice because they choose it. And I know it gets a little dicey legally, if not ethically, at that point, because there's this question of, at what point does my role as custodian reach a more heightened peak? And I'm trying to be vague now because I'm going into choppy waters for my sensibility. But why don't you tell us a little about your perspective, which I'm sure is a little smoother than mine.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes circumstances, whether it's their mental health or alcohol and other drug issues that they may have, might cloud their judgment. And again, we meet people where they are, and we continue to try to find that common ground and be ready for the time that they want to address those issues. We don't have, like I said, we don't have mental health staff. We listen, and we provide resources and referrals to those services. But we do our best not to turn people away, and just, like I said, meet them where they are, try to provide low barriers. But if they are a danger to themselves then, or to others, then, you know, we do refuse service at that point, and just let them know that you need to come back when you can handle yourself. We're not saying that you can't use if you need to use, or drink if you need to drink, but you can't be a hazard to yourself or other people. And we just want to make sure that they get the resources and supports that they need, whether it's food or just somebody to listen or a safe place to sit.
Appreciating that PRC at the end of the day apparently can't help everyone. Do you have a vision of how folks like that ultimately will find a way, or is it destined to largely be a tragedy?
No, I think that we, as long as they keep showing up, we do have some street outreach capacity for folks who are unhoused, but we're also talking about people who are housed, right? And we do also home visits, and we will work with other partner agencies to, you know, do additional crisis intervention if needed. But we just continue to show up, right? As long as they keep showing up, as long as we can keep showing up. And at some point, we'll find that thing that helps them get to the next space. Because we don't want it to end in tragedy. Absolutely not. But we'll keep trying as long as they want us to keep trying. And even when they don't want us to keep trying, we keep trying.
So I'm inclined to kind of go into a philosophical space, because I know we don't have too much time left. And by the way, was there any message that you felt like you haven't put out yet that you really wanted to?
The only thing that I would say is our homeless services is like 25% of our work. And yet that's the thing that people sort of gravitate to, because it is the most controversial, I think, of all of our services.
And the visceral. If you have to like literally step over someone on your way to the, or even, you see the guy holding up the sign as you're driving into Safeway.
For sure.
It's not off-putting to my sensibility at this point, although I think seeing anybody down on their luck is off-putting. But I think, it is off-putting for my sensibility. I'll retract the statement and say, if it's offsetting for my sensibility, where largely I'm seeing people as people and going from there and not assuming the worst, then you have a spectrum, right?
Right.
And so, what's the other 75%?
Probably, let's see, about 40% is our grocery programs. So, of course, like I said, we don't turn anybody away for food. We also do emergency financial assistance to help people pay for their rent or mortgage. Sometimes people don't realize that we do mortgage. We also provide tax services. And then we have this sort of hodgepodge of, what is it? Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. CFN, critical family need. I was like, what's CFN?
I'm glad you remembered, because I had nothing.
Yeah. Critical family need, which is sort of everything else that doesn't kind of fit into housing or homeless services or, economic security services or, So it could be anything along the lines of, you need a computer, you need a phone, you need to make some copies, baby items, a variety of things. So a lot of it is things that we provide, but really I think the most important thing that we do is provide that space to brainstorm. Whether folks come in with the sense of like, oh, I need somebody to brainstorm with, it's usually there's a crisis that they're coming in about, and it leads to the conversation that hopefully leads to, like I said, hope and a plan. Even if it's not like a well-developed plan, you leave at least feeling like, okay, I got something to work with, right? So I think of all of the things we do, that's the thing that has the most impact on a family. The other stuff is stuff, right? It's stuff. And I can give you a lot of stuff, but that's just gonna give you things, not help you develop the next step. But sometimes the stuff is what gets us in, right?
And by the way, you said that, what was it, 1 in 7 are currently using services,
Yes.
but 1 out of 5, or excuse me, 1 out of 2 could be using services?
Absolutely.
So, that's to say that if you feel like you need even the slightest bit of extra assistance, there's ways to reach out to PRC where, you've spent a lot of time lately making it easier for folks to not necessarily have to walk through the door in order to get what you need, in order to get that next rent paycheck or that next rent payment through, and get to that next place where you feel stable again, or maybe you even have ongoing help for a little while with food, and there's a delivery service, isn't there?
Yeah, we do grocery deliveries. We've had to scale that back a little bit while we find more staff, but we will be ramping that back up probably October, November, just in time for the holidays.
So not only can you help people to not reach a lower state than they currently are at, you also are able to hire people and help them to a higher state.
Absolutely. Yep.
Very cool. Yeah. So going into that more philosophical space that I alluded to a few moments ago, and I start with this premise: what does it mean to be a good neighbor? And I think for me, I go back to that Buddhist story about, hey, I'm going to look out for me. You watch your balance on my shoulders, and it's going to work out fine. No, wait. I need you to make sure that, I'm okay, and if I fall, you're going to be there to catch me. And frankly, if I see anything going on with you, I'll help you to figure it out too. And that notion that at the end of the day, there's a balance to it. Because I think it's been deeply ingrained in me that if I don't have a baseline of stability for myself, I could actually go into a place of deficiency for myself if I then try to help somebody else. And so it's important that I feel secure wherever I'm at before I try to offer help, because then I might be doing it the wrong way. But simultaneously, if I'm doing all right, I'm happy to give that $10 for a bag of food at Safeway, or whatever, because I can, and why not? It's not going to take away from me. It's not going to put me, to that place. And so, I see an opportunity. I feel morally obligated to take that opportunity, provided I am stable in myself. And so I come back to that. What does it mean to you to be a good neighbor?
I think that that making sure that our community is supported, right? When you see a need, to be able to offer whatever assistance you can. And you're right. I think you're absolutely right. It made your story, or your last comments made me think of, like, if something happens in a plane, you put your mask on first before you help anybody else, right? So definitely need to make sure that you're okay, and then really be able to provide, just to be there for people. Like when you see that there's a need and you can help with it, to do that, right? To treat people with respect and dignity, and like you don't have to give somebody something. All you have to do is, say hi. Actually like communicate. Sometimes that's all people need, is to know that they're seen.
I seem to see that sign sometimes, all I need from you is a smile or something like that.
Yeah.
And that means a lot.
Absolutely, especially because like we're so used to looking at media of some sort, right? To actually make eye contact and actually have a conversation with somebody is more and more uncommon. And so something like that, something as simple as saying hello, how are you today? And if you notice something, to say something.
Just the simple act of my baseline ought to be kindness.
Absolutely.
And do what I can to frankly struggle with my own fears and uncertainties, to say, even if for a moment, maybe they're not that.
Right.
Maybe they're just a human being, and I can start there by remembering I am too. And, I see how close I can get to having a human interaction.
Absolutely.
Or not. But even if I can just hold back maybe automatic impulse to have what the Buddhists would call aversion, which is one of the three main causes of suffering in Buddhism. See if I can challenge my own sense of aversion.
Right.
Very good. Thank you so much for being here today. Anita Reese, Executive Director of the Pacifica Resource Center, where the motto is Neighbors Helping Neighbors.
Right.
Thank you for helping me to learn what it might be to be a better neighbor, to notice who my neighbors are, and think in terms of what kind of neighbor I really want to be. Appreciate you being here tonight. And Palmapalooza, if you can't get in, make a donation, and next year definitely get in, because 50 years strong.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.